it's the fact that you're truly saving a life. And not only that, but you're giving an animal a second chance. And one of the things that I think about rescue work that I find so rewarding is that we've all been through tough times in our lives. And a lot of times, getting through that can be challenging. And I think when we give a rescue animal a second chance, we realize that we deserve our own second chances too. And so there's something very unique from that aspect.
Welcome to the Call the Vet Show, the podcast that helps keep your furry family as healthy as possible so they can live the full and happy life they deserve. And here's your host, veterinarian Dr. Alex Avery.
Now, why would a senior executive in Silicon Valley with a Harvard MBA leave that career behind her to lead an animal rescue organisation? Well, the voice you heard in the intro was Carol Novello, who is my very special guest today. She was a delight to talk to, and she gives some really deep insights into the benefits of bringing a rescue animal into our lives, not just for them, but also for ourselves. But before we get into that, welcome along to another episode of the Call the Vet Show. If we've not met before, then my name is Dr. Alex Avery. I'm a companion animal veterinarian as well as host of this podcast and founder of ourpetshealth.com. And thank you so much for spending some time with me in your earbuds today. Now, of course, you might not have the room to bring a rescue into your home, or you might not be in the situation where that is a realistic option for you. But there are other things you can do. We can all advocate for these animals, and just being aware of the problem and being aware of what ourselves and our community can do can only be a good thing. So without further ado, let's jump into today's conversation. Carol Novello, I'm really delighted to be talking to you today. Welcome along to the Call the Vet Show.
Well, thanks, Dr. Alex. It's great to be here.
So before we get into kind of all of the fantastic work that you do, Carol, and the benefits of rescue animals and that whole massive topic, which is hugely important, I wanted to get a picture of just the size of the rescue dog and cat population, the size of the problem that we're really dealing with. Because in the US alone, we're talking about millions of animals, aren't we?
Yeah, there's about 6.5 million animals that are coming into the shelters in the United States every year. And of those, about 1 million to 1.5 million are still being euthanized. So we've made tons of progress, but that's still a really big number. And, to put that into context, the human population of San Francisco is about 750,000. So you've got twice the human population of San Francisco in the equivalent of animals being euthanized every year. That's a lot of lives that still need to be saved.
Yeah, when you put that into the human perspective, it's kind of unbelievable. And they're not just being euthanized, are they, because of poor health or real, aggressive behaviors? It's just through being unwanted and not being able to be found homes. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the case for most of them. In world-class sheltering organizations, they're usually able to save over 95% of the animals. And there's 5% that either through natural high mortality, like you find with neonatal kittens. So a good way to look at it is that, of that 6.5 million, probably what's a reasonable amount is to say, maybe 300,000 of those are being euthanized for
kind of justifiable medical and behavioral problems. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's a huge gap. So with that figure in mind, let's maybe jump back to kind of the beginning in your background, because you've got a very interesting background, as I understand it. You're not, you've not been in the animal rescue world your whole life. You started off kind of in the software world and kind of corporate America. So what's your background? What brought you into this world of rescuing animals and the benefits that they have to us as well?
Yeah. Well, it certainly wasn't planned. It was an interesting journey. I actually started out, I got my MBA from Harvard, and I went the corporate route. I was a senior executive at Intuit for many years, which is a really awesome company, and I loved my time there. And as I said, it wasn't planned that I was going to go into nonprofit work, but through serendipity, I had the opportunity to join the board at Humane Society of Silicon Valley. And I've always loved animals. They've been a huge part of my life. And it was such a great organization doing great work. And I thought, gosh, I should just jump in and do this. And I joined the board with no other intent than being on the board and serving through governance. When 6 months in, I was asked if I wanted to step in and become president and run the organization. Okay. And at that point, I was in my early 40s, actually my mid 40s. I was about 45. And I thought about it and I was like, I thought maybe I was going to, stay in the for-profit world for at least another 10 or 15 years and then, quote, give back. And I said, you know what, this is such a great organization. It's such a great opportunity. They don't come along like this, all the time. And so I just dived in with both feet. And so I served as president of Humane Society of Silicon Valley for almost a decade. And during that time is when mutual rescue emerged from my experience there.
Fantastic. And so that brings us to your organization, Mutual Rescue. So what is exactly that your organization does and what kind of caused you to recognize the need for that?
Yeah. So Mutual Rescue is a national initiative that's designed to change the conversation from people or animals to people and animals. And it really came about because when I was at Humane Society of Silicon Valley, people would ask me, why are you helping animals when you could be helping people? And I thought that was such a curious question because I knew just how much animals have helped me in my own life and also how much they were helping all the people I saw adopting animals. And so through that, decided I really wanted to do something that people could understand at a really visceral level, that they'd get it in their body. And so we started telling stories. We started making short films. And our short films just went insanely viral. And that led to the opportunity to create a book. And that led to an opportunity to start to develop programs and toolkits to enable shelters all across the country to implement programs that would help animals and people. And then also provide a way to establish a national brand that then we could attract corporate sponsors into the mix and have national messaging with funding that would go to the local level, which is the front lines of the rescue world, where the rubber hits the road in terms of animals being saved and cared for and getting placed in loving homes.
Yeah. So I love this because the message, it's not just our aim is to help reduce this euthanasia number and to rehome these animals that are in desperate need of homes, but it's also to help the people who are rehoming those animals and giving those animals a home. And I love how it's the people or animals becomes people and animals, and that ties in really nicely with a lot of this One Health concept, which is a veterinary community and a human medical community is becoming more and more prevalent. The recognition that the health of animals, the health of people, and the health of the planet are so closely intertwined, and what's good for one is good for the other. So that's kind of something that really hit home when I heard about you and your organization. And I love that because, I guess a lot of people, think that, well, if I'm going to give money, I'm going to donate to a people cause. It's a cause that's close to their heart. Is that really the reason why you think that the animal charities don't really get much funding or much public support?
Well, I do think there's a perception that animal welfare is a second-class cause. And if you look at the numbers of the $449 billion that Americans gave to charity in 2019, only 3% went to animals and the environment combined. And so there's just this, I think, underlying, sense of, oh gosh, when I'm giving to animals, I'm taking away from people. And I actually, I had donors at Humane Society of Silicon Valley that would say to me, oh, I feel guilty when I write a check for animals because there's so many people in need. Or I feel guilty that I'm volunteering for an animal cause as though somehow it wasn't as worthy. And one of the things that I really wanted to communicate is when you are supporting an animal cause, you are not taking away from people. It's actually part of the solution in terms of healing humanity's woes. And so many people have had ahas with that. I've had a lot of people in the rescue community also come up to me and go, thank you for giving me an answer to how to respond to people when they ask me that question of why are you helping animals when there's so many people in need.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such, I mean, you can completely understand why people think that, and they want to get the most kind of bang for their donation buck, if you like. But yeah, I mean, that's it. Yeah, it gives people the language to use, which is fantastic, and not a way that, personally I'd ever thought about it either. Although clearly in, my consulting room, I see the benefit that animals bring to my clients' lives every day. But putting that into easily understandable language is actually very, very challenging. So I love that. With regards then to the benefit that it does bring to people, it's all very well kind of having, one or two stories. And I know you've got loads, and stories are a hugely important way to drive home that message. But there's a lot of scientific evidence, isn't there, that shows that animals have a positive benefit on people's physical and mental health.
Yes, absolutely. And so, as I said, we started out with Mutual Rescue as something where we were just telling stories. And when I had the opportunity to write the book, I realized that what I really wanted to do was bring in the science behind it. I wanted to bring in the head piece to go with the heart piece and validate that. And there's more and more research that's being done that points to so many different aspects of a human being and how an animal can influence that for the good. So the book itself is broken down into 4 sections. It's broken down into heart, body, mind, and connection. And it talks about various aspects of humans and some of their challenges. So in heart, we talk about trust and security and flourishing after trauma, things that really kind of affect your emotional life. And in body, we talk about your physiology and weight loss and your cardiovascular health. In mind, we talk about depression and grief. And in connection, we talk about relationships. And what's so interesting is there's research that supports the impact that animals are having on us. And it shows up, physiologically in your body. So, you're releasing oxytocin and prolactin and serotonin and all these feel-good biochemicals when you're interacting with your pet. So it's not just in your head, like, oh, I'm having an enjoyable experience. Your body is having an enjoyable experience and a positive experience that's helping you heal and become, have a better inner experience.
Yeah. And I guess with that in mind, I mean, there's a lot of programs now as well, taking dogs into hospitals or into kind of old people's homes and things like that. But what I found interesting is that doctors are kind of prescribing, if you like, a pet to help their clients. Yeah,
there was some interesting research that I talk about in the book, and it's 60% of doctors believe that animals can have an impact on your health. And 97% said that they, would actually prescribe an animal. And in fact, our very first film, Eric and Petey, which is a story about an overweight man, and he went to go see a naturopathic doctor. And the very first thing that she said, her first prescription to him, was to go and adopt a shelter dog and walk him a half an hour, at least once a day. And so I love that. I love that doctors are seeing that impact, and they recognize the various ways. I mean, it's not the doctor that made that prescription for Eric. It wasn't just about getting him physically active. She also really saw he wasn't very connected socially and that he needed to have an emotional experience. And Eric will say the first time he ever really experienced what felt like true unconditional love came from Petey. And that's a really pretty profound experience for a person to have and to know what that feels like.
Yeah, absolutely. And the impact on his life is transformative, I would imagine, but also then the impact that he's able to have on his community and passing that benefit on to a lot of other people. So that's one story. I mean, I know you've got lots. Have you got some other kind of stories to show how different people in very different situations with different problems have been helped out by their rescue animal? And is it just really dogs that you concentrate on, or are cats a part of that as well?
Cats are a part of it as well. We've done films that include both dogs and cats. And in the book, there's actually a chapter on other kinds of animals, including horses and pigs and donkeys. And so it's not just limited. It's amazing. There's kind of a whole interspecies experience that one can have. But I think one of, all of the films that we've made are favorites of mine for a variety of reasons. But I think one of the more unusual ones that we've made recently was Bhuvana, Abhishek, and Lollipop. And that is the story of a young Indian couple, and their marriage was really unraveling. And they ended up adopting a cat. And they credit that cat with really transforming their marriage and their relationship. And that's really pretty amazing. And, they got through their really rough patch and came to appreciate one another in a new way. Bhuvanath saw how Abhishek was caring for Lollipop, and it helped her really soften and realize how much he cared for her by caring for this cat that they both had. And they've since gone on to have a baby, and they've gotten through it on the other side. But Lollipop is what helped them really create a family.
Yeah, what is it about rescues specifically that maybe provides this benefit to us that maybe if you're just going to a breeder and getting a puppy or kitten doesn't?
Well, I think it's the fact that you're truly saving a life. And not only that, but you're giving an animal a second chance. And one of the things that I think about rescue work that I find so rewarding is that we've all been through tough times in our lives. And a lot of times, getting through that can be challenging. And I think when we give a rescue animal a second chance, we realize that we deserve our own second chances too. And so there's something very unique from that aspect. And I also personally think that somehow rescue animals know they're getting a second chance. I don't have any scientific evidence to prove that. And that's something I'm pretty big about in the book, but I do feel like they know, and there's some appreciation for having a home and experiencing love after they've been abandoned that I think is quite unique and very special.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're smarter than we think sometimes.
Yeah, I think
Lots
so
of the
too.
time they're good at training us, and we don't give them credit sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah, so from that point of view, I guess people, because the other thing that I come across, both in my online work and in my kind of clinic work, is that people are maybe anxious about getting rescue animals. They don't, they think that they're going to come with a whole host of different problems, different medical problems, different behavioral problems, and it's going to be an awful lot of hard work. So maybe more from your previous work with the shelter system and the Humane Society, what would your kind of comments be on that? Because that's, that can be a real concern, especially if you're maybe dealing with a rescue organization who's just happy to give any dog to any individual, and there's no screening problem. But I know people, because the last thing people want is to be trying to do a good thing, and maybe being in a difficult situation themselves and recognizing the benefit that an animal could have, but then being lumped with, if you like, a problem individual or a whole host of veterinary bills that are unaffordable. So what would your kind of comments be, and maybe your message be to people who are thinking about a rescue dog but have their reservations?
Yeah. Well, so I think first of all, you have to think about animals like people in the context that they're each individuals. And so you want to be looking for the right match for you. And first of all, there are tons of kittens and puppies that are coming into shelters. So if you really want to start from scratch, you can do that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that when you are starting from scratch with a puppy and a kitten, oftentimes, whether you're getting an animal from a breeder or from a shelter, you don't really know what their personality is going to be like when they're that young. And so one of the things that I personally enjoy about adopting older cats and older dogs is that their personalities are already formed. And I have to tell you, there are some amazing animals. They're not all, quote, broken. And in fact, so many of them are incredibly resilient, which I think, again, is another thing about them that is very, very inspiring. So are there animals in the sheltering system that need more medical care than you might want to take on? Yes. So that probably won't be a match for you. But I would also suggest that when you are getting a purebred dog from a breeder, there are a lot of issues with purebred dogs. A lot of animals, they have been so inbred, they're candidates for bad hips and cancer and all kinds of things. So I think it's a mistake to do a broad brushstroke and just say, oh, I'm going to get a dog from the breeder because I'm guaranteed not to have problems. That's not the case.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, what we see a lot in our shelter is people have gotten animals from breeders and it ends up not being a fit, and then they surrender the animal to the shelter. So I would just always say, there's no reason not to check out rescue animals that are in your community, and making sure that you're working with a reputable shelter and rescue group is really important. At Humane Society of Silicon Valley, we will always take an animal back, whatever, if you adopted it a week ago or 10 years ago, we will always take that animal back if for some reason it's not a fit or something happens. And so that needs to be okay. I mean, obviously we want to make a great match and hope that it's going to stick. But, sometimes it's not a match. And I think we have to take a little bit of that stigma away. I mean, when you look at divorce, the divorce rate is 50%. So, sometimes it just doesn't fit, but you want to do your best to make a great match.
Yeah, absolutely. And life changes, doesn't it? And through no fault of our own, and what may be fine for, even 10 years, situations change. I mean, the current situation that we find ourselves in across the world is a prime example of that. And I guess from the rescue point of view, they've, most dogs are in there and cats are through no fault of their own. So much like we might have fallen upon hard times, that's exactly the same with them. And yeah, it's funny you say about the purebred dogs having problems. I mean, some breeds are just walking vet bills, aren't they?
They are.
You can almost guarantee problems, and some of them can be incredibly expensive and frustrating. Some of those are hidden. I was speaking to somebody else a few podcasts ago about the poodle mix explosion that's happening in the UK. I don't know if that's the same in the US, but they are massively overrepresented in behavioral problems, for example, which just makes life very difficult. And you're absolutely right. You don't know what you're getting in a puppy or a kitten. Even a young dog, if they go through their adolescent phase at 9 months, they can be very different at 18 months or 2
exactly.
years.
Well, I think a great example of that is Marley and Me. That's such a well-known book, right? And oh my gosh, the behavioral challenges with that dog were just, I was like, that tops all, most shelter dogs I know. So I don't think there's any guarantee there around it. And again, there's just so many wonderful animals that are in this sheltering system that, I just highly recommend that people at least consider it and check it out. And, if you end up feeling like you need to go the breeder route, I don't think it's helpful when we pass judgment on people if they make that decision. But I always like to encourage people like, hey, you know what, if you really do care about animals and you decide to buy from a breeder, maybe make a donation to your local shelter or rescue group, just as a gesture of the fact that your heart cares for all animals.
Yeah, absolutely. And even just having that consideration will make you more aware of the problem. And ultimately, you've got 6.5 million dogs and cats to choose from if you're in the US and it's the same across the world. I know in the UK and in here in New Zealand and Australia, there's a huge number of dogs and cats wanting a home. So as well as, like you say, kind of rescuing a dog from a shelter or making a donation, what other ways can people help out? I imagine a lot of them are crying out for volunteers and for dog walkers and all that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, so volunteering, fostering is a really great way to have an animal in your life if you're not in a position to be able to make a longer term commitment. We also have a program here in the United States. It's not in full swing right now because of COVID, but Doggy Day Out is a wonderful program. We worked with shelters across the country to put together a toolkit to make it easier for shelters to establish Doggy Day Out programs. And essentially what it is the general public can come and take a dog out for the afternoon. So it's a great opportunity. You get the experience of being with an animal for the afternoon, going to the park or on a long walk or the beach, depending on where you are. And the dog gets some exercise and a break from the shelter. And shelters that have those programs have found that their adoption rates have increased significantly. One of the early organizations that established that was the Fredericksburg XPCA, and they saw a 20% increase in their dog adoptions because there were so many more people coming in, so many more animals getting exposure. So there's all different ways that you can get involved depending on how much time you have to dedicate to the cause.
Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. And that would be great for example, for young families who maybe don't have the space to have a dog, but to introduce their children to animals and that's going to have a massive benefit in their life, even if it just means that they are more likely to get one when they're older, or they have more empathy towards, their fellow man and other animals and things. So that's a massively, I can see how that would be so beneficial. And then I guess from your organization, from Mutual Rescue, how can people help spread this message that it's not just, it's not people or animals, It's people and animals?
Well, if you go to mutualrescue.org, you can check out all of our short films and viewing those and sharing them with your friends and family so more people can really understand and experience the impact is great. There's the Mutual Rescue book, which is available through online retailers in the United States. And we're also have a newsletter you can sign up for on our website. And we've got an exciting new program we're going to be launching in the fall related to supporting pet pantries across the country. And so that's something that people can get involved with in the future. And also check us out on social media, especially on our Facebook page. That's where you'll find all the latest and greatest information there.
Cool. So pet pantries, that sounds like a really interesting thing.
Yeah, the Pet Pantry is a program that shelters offer to help families and pets stay together so they don't end up being surrendered into the shelter in the first place. And it's especially important right now with the pandemic. People are losing their homes, they're losing their jobs, and they're in a situation where they have to make a decision. Do their children eat, or do their dogs eat, or their cats eat? And, we just don't ever think that should be the case. So that's a bigger and bigger deal. And I think that as animal welfare moves forward, the integration of human and animal services is going to be really important. We had one case in particular that I remember from Humane Society of Silicon Valley, where a really lovely family came in and their dog had a huge tumor on its paw, really super painful for the dog. And they came in thinking they were going to have to surrender the animal because they couldn't afford the surgery. The mom was going through cancer. They couldn't pay the medical bills for the mom. They had an 8-year-old girl. She was sobbing at the thought of losing this animal. And what we saw was a family that loved their animal, that loved one another, and they just were on hard times. So we actually, specifically had a donor that had set up a fund to help out in scenarios like that. So we did that surgery for the dog. We were able to remove the tumor, rehab him, and then reunite him with his family. And I'll tell you what a joyous, joyous moment that was. So, we need to think about pets as an extension of families. And, having that dog remain with that family during a time of crisis was far more healing for them than if that dog had to be surrendered and rehomed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no bigger way that you could demonstrate that it's people and animals with that. And I think that, people are, falling on such hard times at the moment, but having to then give up their family member because that's what our families are. I mean, it's absolutely heartbreaking. On top of, losing your job, losing your home, you have to give away your family member. I mean, if you think of it in those terms, it's just...
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's absolutely heartbreaking, isn't it? And I know there's other charities. One that I'm aware of in the UK is something called Street Vet. So even they go out and provide free veterinary care to the homeless pet population. And the benefit that those pets bring to those homeless people is just unquantifiable, really.
Yeah.
So, Carol, there's some amazing things that we all need to think about, some amazing stories to share. And I definitely encourage everyone to head over to the Mutual Rescue website. I'll leave obviously all the links in the show notes to that. Share those videos on your social feed as well to help get this message out, because it requires word of mouth as well as trying to tap into viral algorithms and things like that, which we're all a slave to. But word of mouth is just so important. And even if you don't have room for a rescue dog in your home, we can all be advocates, can't we?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us, Carol. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Dr. Alex. It was really fun to be here.
So I hope, like me, you got a ton of insight and a whole new enthusiasm and appreciation into the rescue animal population and the benefit that both them and us can derive from having them in our lives in one way or another. Make sure you check out some of those links in the show notes. I'll add links to Carol's organisation, Mutual Rescue, as well as the other resources that we spoke about. So yeah, definitely head over there. And like I say, share those on social media to help get the word out, because you never know, that one share could mean a new home and a completely new beginning and second chance for an animal and their new soon-to-be owner. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well on this episode and anything else that you have in your mind. The best place to get me is on Instagram, where you'll find me at Our Pets Health. Send me a DM, leave a comment on any of my posts, and I'd love to hear from you. But that's it from me with today's episode. Remember to subscribe if you're not already. And until next time, I'm Dr. Alex. This is the Call the Vet Show, because they're family.
Thanks for listening to Call the Vet. For full show notes and any links mentioned in today's show, head over to callthevet.org, where you can also submit your question to be featured on an upcoming episode. We'll see you next time.